Hello, my name is Gary Mansfield, and this is a bonus episode of the Ministry of Arts podcast. Now, as ever, let's begin by banging these bongos.
Yeah, right. Crazy.
Hello, and welcome to this bonus episode of the Ministry of Arts podcast. Before I take you to meet today's guest, I should just mention that the Ministry of Arts merch shop is open now. So if you go over to the Ministry of Arts Instagram profile, you'll find a Linktree drop-down box which will give you the link to the merch site. Go over, take a look, you may find something you like, and 100% of the proceeds go back into the podcast. Well, today I'm taking you to meet Zoë Allen from Artistic Statements. Artistic Statements create impactful art installations. From pop-up immersive displays for events, indoor graphic murals and temporary interactive installations, to large-scale permanent public artworks, digital animation design, light sculptures and more. But come and find out more about Artistic Statements from its founder, Zoë Allen. Zoë, I have several questions that I ask each guest. And the first being, how would you explain what you do to someone that may not know you?
A very good question. I try and do it as simply as possible. I specialise in site-specific art installations in commercial spaces. So I represent a wide variety of multidisciplinary, artistic, creative talent, and I commission them on bespoke pieces. So that ranges from sort of sculpture works, lighting, 2D illustration. It's kind of across the board. It depends on sort of what the space is.
Well, I did have a look at the Artistic Statements Instagram profile and website. Oh, you've got some sensational stuff going on there, haven't you?
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's I've worked on some really exciting projects since I started 4 years ago, but obviously I'm only as good as the creative talent that I represent. So yeah, it's been an amazing few years.
So Artistic Statements is where we're at both this year and presumably 2019 was when it started.
It was, yeah.
Let's take it back all the way further and speak about Zoë Allen.
Yeah.
Did you have creativity in the home growing up?
100%. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So my mum and dad both renovated properties all through sort of my childhood. So we were kind of just very used to, I guess, sort of watching period properties be transformed right in front of our eyes and sort of running around on kind of building sites and the smell of wet plaster. So it was very, very much kind of ingrained in us in seeing the kind of creativity of spaces being transformed. And my dad, was in property. My mum's an interior designer and artist. So it's definitely, I get my kind of creative flair from her, but probably entrepreneurial spirit from both of them as well.
Brilliant. Did you go down the arts line yourself?
No, so it's interesting, I suppose feeling like I've come full circle, and for those friends that I've had since primary school or secondary school, I think being an art consultant feels completely natural to them because I was always very artistic in school. It was sort of one of my favorite subjects, and even in primary school they'd get me to kind of design the Christmas program and the sort of theatre productions and so on. So drawing and art was a huge kind of part of growing up. But I think I was relatively academic. I was relatively good at school, so I had sort of good grades, and I think it was just natural to kind of go down the academia route. I just never considered kind of taking art further, even into A-level. I didn't do it for A-level. Yeah. So yeah, it's very much kind of part of my identity, but I never considered kind of taking it further as a career. And I think a lot of people, say and experience that. You just don't think that it can be a vocation. I knew that I was ambitious. I knew I wanted a lot out of life, and I was willing to work for it. But I suppose also I probably wasn't producing artworks. I was very creative in different ways, but outside of school, I don't think I sort of took that into my teens. So it's interesting now that I've kind of come full circle, which I'll sort of talk through with more of a kind of business development and sales and some backpacking to kind of come full circle and think actually art and creativity is ingrained in my DNA, and it's something I'm hugely passionate about. And if I could combine the skills that I had in the business and sort of sales world with that passion, that would be a winning formula. So it's, you know, I say this a lot. It's one of my favorite quotes from Steve Jobs, is that you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And I just love that, because it's so true. You know, you kind of question the directions that you have in life in your 20s, and question all the decisions and where you're going, and the trajectories, but actually you kind of come full circle and say, you know what, it was probably all meant to be, and it was a really interesting path. So
what area was your business and sales in?
Get ready. I mean, it's very, very dry, very boring. So I graduated with a degree in social anthropology and journalism. So travel is still a really huge passion of mine. And I just wanted to get away and experience the world and see the world and photograph the world and write about the world. But it was a very, very difficult time graduating in 2008 during the recession. So, you know, I think there was probably, I don't know, sort of 20 journalism jobs, graduate jobs, for about 20,000 applicants. And as much as I was good at blagging my way into things like the Casino Royale press circle to meet an ITM cameraman to get some work experience there, and various sort of blags to get myself some good work experience within journalism, I just realized very quickly that I wasn't going to be able to support myself in London, you know, on sort of, well, low salaries, even if I'd have got the job. So it felt kind of natural, I guess. I was always been relatively good with words and sort of speaking, to kind of go down the sales route. And I thought, actually, that could be my ticket out. If I can earn some money quickly, I can get out of my overdraft, get some savings together, and bugger off and go and have an adventure for a couple of years. So, you know, that took about 18 months, 2 years after graduating, and it was cutthroat. It felt like quite a brutal time of telesales, and we were selling conferences to law firms. So it was
nice, rather niche.
Yeah, 200 phone calls a day to kind of the top 100 law firms in the country, and trying to get through gatekeepers. But it really built a lot of resilience. You know, I can honestly say I really hated the job, but actually it taught me how to, you know, not just speak to people, I guess, but just the sort of sales process, and also working in what was a pretty male dominated sort of team. And, you know, it was competitive and it was commission based, but I did well. And I think it taught me that resilience. And I think just, you know, having a goal of getting away and backpacking, I was very, very focused on that. It was just get your head down, get the experience in, and get out. So yeah, I you know, and then I think when I was backpacking, it got me out of trouble a few times. You know, you run out of money pretty quickly when you're backpacking, having too much fun, you know, and I'd be stuck in whatever places in Southeast Asia or Australia or New Zealand. I did the kind of, you know, the standard backpacking route. But each time I ran out of money, I could get a sales job very quickly and earn a lot more in a week than most people could in a bar in a month. So it was kind of my fallback, but I found it soul destroying. I really, really hated it. Or, as I said, the sort of Steve Jobs quote, it is all connected and all kind of leads me to where I am now, which is quite interesting. I think that kind of commercial head is so important. And I guess, you know, most creatives would say they don't have it, or they hate sales, or they're not good at sort of selling themselves. And I think sales has quite often felt like a dirty word, even up until recently. And I'm now seeing it as the superpower. I just think it needs to be, it needs to have a rebrand, I think, you know, because it does feel dirty. It does feel like, oh God, you know, sales. But when you're, you know, I suppose sort of, without sounding cheesy, selling a dream or a vision, or there's a famous Simon Sinek TED talk, I don't know if you know it, where it's people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So they're buying into you and kind of your story, you know, and it sounds really sort of calculating, but that is just naturally what I do anyway. I absolutely love what I do. I'm hugely passionate about the industry, about the creatives, and about accessibility in the art world, you know, getting public artwork out there and supporting the careers of creatives. That is a natural passion of mine, and that comes across in meetings, and then people kind of buy into it. So it's a very honest thing, but people do really buy into it. And I wish that more artists could kind of understand that the story of how they've come to be and produce their works is hugely valuable, and people are interested in hearing it because it's them, it's their identity is wrapped up in those artworks. So it's sort of, it's storytelling, and that's really all kind of sales is, right? So I'm so pleased that I've had that experience, but it's also coined with a hugely artistic flair and creative sensibilities to be able to understand what spaces are and have an eye for it. And those two things together set me apart as an art consultant. And you mentioned imposter syndrome a minute ago. I definitely had that when I started. I don't have an arts background, which sounds mad as an art consultant, but the skills that I do have within the kind of area that I'm in within the sort of property industry is hugely valuable. I'm the sort of conduit between both industries, and I can speak both languages. And that sales again comes into property, that I understand that kind of, the process involved in business and the sort of commercial selling of buildings and leasing of buildings and so on. So being able to wear both hats is really, really useful. So I'm now I feel like I'm owning it a little bit more, as I know I'm good at what I do. I know that I can deliver great projects, and it's because of those skill sets and that experience. And it's not having an arts background has not held me back, and I don't think it will.
Well, I was speaking to a gallery owner a little while ago, and he's got a new gallery, relatively new, and he said to me, I know nothing about art. I've got, but I know sales.
Yeah.
So he employs people that do know about art.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, he was brutally honest about it. It didn't sit too well with me at first because, like you said, I'm a bit funny when it comes to sales. It does feel a bit dirty.
Yeah.
But Christ, man, we can't get by without selling our work,
Exactly. And it's, because of that, and even, the sort of the property industry, the budgets are fair, and they're there and they're needed. And because of that, I get to feed back those budgets into the creative industry. So it's a great thing that we're able to sell. It means that artists can be supported and have those sort of opportunities. So yeah.
So can we go to, I don't know, 6 months, a year before Artistic Statement started? How did it come about from idea to conception?
So I sort of cut my teeth at an art agency I was director there for 7 years. So sort of after backpacking, I'd come back and, had this kind of wealth of sales experience and new business and business development experience. But essentially I was like, I'm out. I can't do sales anymore. I really don't care about it. It's soul destroying. I just, want to be around the kind of creative industry. So I went to a creative recruiter and just said, look, this isn't my kind of interests and skill sets. But I do have this kind of new business, background. So if there's something that can kind of combine it. And they approached me with an agency that was very much a sort of startup. There were literally 3 or 4 people in the business. They'd been sort of friends from university, the founders, and they needed somebody to kind of go out and, sell the dream. But it was an agency that were creating bespoke artworks within the kind of office sector. And I saw some of these artworks and they just blew me away. I think I again sort of bought into what they were trying to do in transforming workplace environments. So it was kind of off the back of these really creative and inspiring workspaces that Google were creating, that then created this whole kind of tsunami of kind of creative workplaces, and we were riding that wave. It was a really, really exciting time. So it never felt like sales. It was going out and meeting architects, interior designers, and property developers and landlords, and literally just showing the portfolio of work. So if this is about storytelling and we weave either kind of the brand into the building, or we're looking at the story and history of the building itself. So each artwork had a really kind of strong story that people were buying into, and suddenly I was buying into it. So although I was really creative, I wouldn't necessarily say that I'd have known anything about art or even really followed the art industry, but these works were so inspiring that what they were kind of creating in-house, and every single project that was different, I was just so excited. So, I was very, very motivated by what I was doing. And it didn't feel like sales because I was going out and presenting a portfolio and people were sort of buying into that. I wasn't in the office, which I loved. I'm not good at sitting at a desk 9 to 5. I think I'd done enough of that kind of corporate sales team and sitting in very dull offices on the phone all day. It was like, I don't want to do that. And it wasn't. I was networking. And of course, the sales kept coming in, the company grew. So I was, head of sales in that time. The pressure was on as we grew. We went from 4 people to late 30s by the time I left.
Oh, wow.
And I just worked my absolute butt off. It was blood, sweat and tears. And, saying it didn't feel like sales, there was still, a lot of pressure and sales targets, but the day-to-day, sort of functioning, it didn't. But I think in the end, I was probably at burnout. If I look back, I think I'd just been on this like running machine and just running full pelt because the industry was buoyant. We were in London. It was after the 2012, Olympics that there was just this incredible energy to the city. And I was just so excited that I didn't need to sit in an office, and that even when I went into the office, it was like a cool art collective that had a really cool studio in Shoreditch, and there were dogs running around and drum and bass playing. And I was like, what is this? Is this my job? Like, this is nuts. And then I'm getting to go in and create these artworks. So it was kind of, again, using the sort of sales and sort of business sort of side of things in terms of a very corporate property industry. So I had the ability to be, suited up, Mayfair meeting with the property guys, but then put a pair of trainers on, run over to Shoreditch and go and brief the design team and be able to kind of have that understanding. And then I was, running kind of creative workshops of these teams and developing a brief alongside them, and then going back and sort of speaking the language of artists and creativity and understanding that process to extract the best out of the creative team. So I really loved every single element of that job, other than the kind of sales target forecasting sort of side of things. But that naturally comes when you're sales director. But after 7 years, I was just exhausted, and I thought, I've got to ask myself, which often people do, where do you want to be in a year? Where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years? And I just thought, I don't want to be here next year. It's going to be the same thing. It's going to be, you're just feeding the beast in the end, right? Like, it's just the bigger the studio gets, the bigger the targets, you're having to support those salaries. And so I did a kind of cliche Bali, switch off kind of retreat few weeks. And I came back and the writing was really on the wall. I think if I'm really honest with myself, I've probably always, envisioned having a business of my own. I think having the pressure of other business owners kind of, monitoring my success based on a kind of sales figure, it just didn't sit well with me. And I just thought, the writing's on the wall. I've got a great network of property clients that I've delivered multiple buildings with, and they understand the process. And I've delivered great projects with them because of an eye for creativity and what the space needed, but also the kind of PR and marketing aspect and the storytelling of these buildings. I knew what I could deliver. And the most exciting thing is that in that company, I was confined to working with the in-house creatives and design team. And that was on the basis of who was available. And there were different sort of levels of artists and designers. But I thought, well, if I set up on my own, I've got the world's creative talent to tap into. And that's just...
You haven't got a pool of artists, you've got an ocean of artists.
Yeah, and it was infinite. And I thought, that's just so exciting to be able to actually reach out to artists that might not have ever done a public art installation, might not have ever had their kind of work out there, and to be able to kind of extract their creativity and to handhold and sort of mentor and work with them to deliver something really exciting. That was just really, really, an amazing kind of thought. And also to really focus on public art and placemaking. So the agency that I was at, as I said, we're doing like sort of largely office environments, and that still makes up a big part of what my business does now, but really kind of pushing the public art side of things and getting artwork accessible to people that wouldn't ordinarily have art in their life. That really excites me. So the kind of supporting of creative industries, working with different artists and art accessibility, I just thought, that's the vision. If I can just, as a mission, get that out to people, and I've got the network of clients that will be paying for those things, then it's a winning formula. So I joked with friends, I didn't have a business plan. That's not really how I roll. I just thought, again, the sales voice in my head, get out.
Yeah, but so on one side, you've got these property developers and owners and whatnot, landlords that possibly want art installation. On the other side, you've got an endless pool of artists that want to give them to you.
Exactly.
All you've got to do is just tie the ends. So you didn't really need a business plan as such.
Thank you. I'm glad you said that. Well, interestingly, I had an article in the Daily Mail financial section on exactly that. And it was kind of the lockdown of like, I didn't need a business plan. And obviously I had all the haters on Daily Mail commenting going, well, I'd like to see how her business is faring, in a year's time. And I got absolutely like heckled for it. But 4 years on, I'm still going strong, still growing. Projects are getting bigger. So I really didn't. And I think, again, it's just sometimes, there's a lot of what they call them, sofapreneurs, people that just, have lots of business ideas, but never actually get off their bums to do anything about it. And I think I could have spent a year developing an app, developing a website, putting a business, case together or business plan together. but all I did was just got out and met with my old clients and the industry and said, what are you working on? What can I help you on? And I think because quite often they won't have an established creative brief. You know, it's a creative industry to an extent, but you know, there were big blank walls and people going, look, we're not really too sure how to approach this. So that's when my kind of artistic head comes in to say, look, the space needs this. And I will be able to kind of sow the seeds back to a creative and say, look, here are the streams of kind of the narrative and the story that we want to tell. But actually, from a materiality perspective, this is what's needed. And this is the branding pack. And this is the tone of voice, whether it's Mayfair, Shoreditch, wherever that building's situated, or externally. I'm sowing the seeds to the creative to then extract the best ideas sort of from them. So yeah, it's really interesting. So I've forgotten what your question was. I went off at such a tangent.
I can't remember either. But you mentioned there about the client's perspective.
Yeah.
But from the creative's perspective, I was speaking to Lexmi Hussain when she was doing, or just before she was doing the Wembley thing that she'd done. She was so excited about that project. I think she may have been doing it at the time I was chatting with her.
She's just one of my favorite people on the planet. I adore Lakshmi, and she's that, you know, that was a really great example of an artist that I'd been following her work. We arranged to meet, and it was just, we just totally vibed off each other. The energy that she sort of emits is just so warm, so passionate, so dedicated to her craft. You know, she's a mum of 3. She's balancing kind of, you know, the art and family life. And I found her a total inspiration. And I just said, I'm going to find you a project. And I love working like that, to say, let me, and through, you know, manifesting, I made it happen. And she's, you know, born and raised in the borough. And I'd curated, I had this concept of putting together for International Women's Day an all-female art trail throughout Wembley a couple of years ago. And there was this canvas, and she said, well, I've not done a public art commission, I've not done anything 3D. And I'm like, well, you are now. So, you know, kind of managing that. And now
can't get yourself a bigger brush.
Yeah, exactly that. And you work through it. You know, there's never a set process to any of the installations that I do, because they're all unique. They're all site specific, which means I'm always slightly outside my comfort zone, but that truly is where the magic happens. And it just means that things are constantly kept interesting, and it pushes them. And now she's having much more kind of, you know, larger commissions, public art commissions. And she walks past that installation most days with her kids. And that, you know, really warms my heart. So I always ask every artist and creative that I meet, what's your dream project, dream client, dream canvas? Like, think big, and I'll try and make it happen, because it's lovely to hear where they're at. They might be hugely successful already, but going, do you know what? I would love to do, you know, a hospital project, or actually I'd love to do something in my hometown, or whatever it is. I love hearing what inspires them and what they want from the next.
And from the artist perspective, because most artists are just in their studio, their sort of vision doesn't go too far beyond the wall until they're given an opportunity like that.
Exactly.
And similar happened to me a couple of years ago. I'd never done any public work. Lee and Catherine from the Skip Gallery, I was chatting with them, mentioned an idea to them, and they went, right, give us some diagrams, give us some more information, come back to us, and we'll see what we can do. And then a little while later, they went, right, we've got a site for you. I've got a skip.
Yeah.
Crack on. And then from there, that made me think bigger. Although it was, you know, only a skip, but it was outside. It was a public-ish piece of work.
It's always thinking big is so important, and pushing boundaries like that is woven into, you know, the values of my business is to always push it. And I want clients to be slightly outside their comfort zone. I want the artists to as well. We've all, to get really interesting results, you kind of have to do that. So even when I'm looking, you know, at individual projects, it's like, how can we add another layer of value to the client, but also onto the whole scheme, that this is like a first and this is something exciting? Because once you've got that energy and people are pooling together, the excitement and the positive energy that project kind of emits is amazing, you know. Even talking about Lee and Catherine, so obviously just commissioned them on the Rewilding Westfield project. Brilliant. You know, it's a huge canvas. It's 180 meters long. It's, you know, it's a massive mural. But even that, we came back and I said, I want to take this to the next level. Like, can we integrate some AR? And the client was totally on board with it. They were really excited. They'd not done it before. Lee and Catherine hadn't. So I pulled in another creative agency to kind of collaborate with us and go, like, let's do it. Now, it was great that Westfield had the budget to do it, but also just bringing that project team on as a first was like really exciting. So I always want to go big. It's like, push it. Can it be bigger? Can it be illuminated? Can it be interactive? And that's really where you capture people's imaginations in art. I think it needs to kind of, you know, we're saturated with content and so much going on in London. It's like, to really kind of stand out, you've got to keep pushing it. But I love it, you know, and I love being able to work with such different types of creatives. And I was approached last year to curate a tattoo artist exhibition.
Brilliant.
I mean, you know, if someone had said to me a few years ago, you're working with tattoo artists, like, okay, cool. I would never have, you know, seen that happening, but it was brilliant. And it was, you know, a world-class tattoo artist from in LA, you know, with a huge Instagram following, very sort of well-known in the industry. And he'd curated his, you know, all of his sort of network of tattoo artists to create these artworks for charity. So it was completely his vision. And I was like, I'm in, like, I want to be involved in this, because what a great project to raise funds for a youth homeless charity. The client Argent, you know, donated some space. So you know, all the way along the process, it was this really positive sort of project, and they just needed help in pulling it all together and putting this exhibition on. And it was a little bit like Challenge Annika, with running around like a headless chicken trying to get artwork on walls. And between the three of us, we kind of made it happen and, you know, dressed the space, and it was great. And it was, you know, a huge turnout, hundreds of people kind of spilling out onto the street. I loved it. But as I said, I never ever expected of working with tattoo artists. And, you know, likewise, I'm now sort of thinking, you know, do I look at working maybe in the performance art sort of area, or bring music in? So when I had, you know, looking at names of what to call the business, and do I just kind of use my name as a kind of consulting or sort of a, you know, a company name, I thought I like artistic statements just because it's simple and it does what it says on the tin. And I have to be mindful of the property industry, that, you know, it's a relatively simple and understandable sort of concept and name, but also it does span across so many different types of projects. You can make an artistic statement with, you know, your sock choice or your tie choice, you know, right the way through to kind of spaces and music and so on. You can make creative statements in so many different sort of areas. So I kind of interested to see how I can, you know, bring in more music into sort of pieces, or sound and performance. So that's really interesting to kind of think, God, I wonder what the projects are going to be over the next few years. Like, it could be anything.
And have you got any projects about to come to fruition?
So I've just had the Westfield project launch. When was that? So 2 or 3 weeks ago, which has been a really exciting one. As I said, it was a very sort of positive and exciting and uplifting project, particularly in springtime, to have something that was kind of biophilia and sort of floral themed, but bringing in the kind of tech element and interactivity. Lee and Catherine were just a delight to work with. The clients, you know, was great to work with, as were the AR team. So it was just a really, really lovely scheme to sort of be a part of. So kind of riding that wave for the moment. We've got a decent amount of press from that, which is great, and really positive feedback from the client in terms of sort of driving footfall, and, you know, great sort of feedback from it. So it's important to kind of stop and really appreciate and look at those projects and be sort of proud of them and proud of the artist. Because I think, going back to the sales conversation, sometimes, you know, you're on to the next project without just stopping and appreciating. So I'm trying to slow down a little bit this year and just take stock of what's been achieved, where I want to take the business, what types of projects I want to work on, types of people I want to work with. So yeah, I'm just sort of working hard on, you know, pushing that Westfield project, but taking a little bit of a step back as well. And then I've got probably 10 other projects on that are all at different sort of stages. So some of them are long-term public art schemes that won't be delivered for another sort of 2 to 3 years. So it's very much in the sort of strategy, you know, planning stages. I've got 2 projects launching next year, which are public art, and then various things coming up sort of over the summer and into the autumn. So yeah, some exciting projects.
So you've not got
exciting. I wouldn't take
got time to sit back on your laurels and relax.
Yeah, I'm just at the moment, these last sort of few weeks, just taking a little bit of a breather, because, you know, there's a lot that goes into delivering these schemes, and I think I had a hell of a lot on last year, and I was probably too busy, and again getting to kind of burnout stage. So it's just kind of, okay, how can I manage that better in the future and have more of a kind of support structure around me, because I'm running this on my own. It's tough. You're trying to wear, you know, 20 different hats. So
brilliant. For anyone who would like to see what artistic statements are doing, how can they see what you're doing, be it website or social media?
Yep, so you can visit the website, which is www.artisticstatements.co.uk. Instagram handle is artistic_statements, but I actually use that as more of a sort of visual mood board. I think it's really useful to kind of look at what is out there in the world, what's exciting me in innovation, in design. I kind of make sure that I cross over from all mediums of light and architecture and fashion, because it's just somewhere, it's a sort of inspiration board. So I set that up in the beginning because I didn't have a portfolio of works when I first sort of started up, and actually I've just continued it and gone, do you know what, this is actually really great as a way of celebrating other art installations and works that I've not produced. So that's that account. And then my personal account is Zoe Dolce Vita, which is kind of a personal account, but it's a mix of everything really. It's kind of the art galleries and artistic things that I get up to, mixed with food, mixed with travel. It's kind of the sweet life that I lead, that I work very hard for. So
it's a visual representation of what you was thinking at the time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
For the interview, it's really, really interesting to talk to you.
Brilliant. And hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. And you, mate. Speak soon.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you've got an exhibition or any other creative project within the arts, or even just want to promote your own artwork, you could do that in podcast form, similar to the one you've just listened to. They start at a convenient price point that is comfortable for any artist working on a budget. This podcast itself is created by working artists, and we know how important that is. So to find out more information, you can email us on ministryofartsorg@gmail.com or on Instagram @ministryofartsorg. Ta-da!